Countdown, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, blast off. Behind the rocket clock, a lion in the grass, the long, long grass.
So we start to add all these things together, and we can see that as the people of the Commonwealth, we have always had a federal power in God, King and Country, because those are the men that forged and created governance in the first place. He who creates has the line of authority, correct? So we look at who we are and start to demonstrate it across the world. Demonstrate to the government that we're not going to let them step outside of the limitations that were put on the table. There is a history of events that you have witnessed over the last years that could add a few things up together as to this monetary war that has been going on around you while you remain dependent on its supply instead of looking at stepping out from it. You're giving it the power to create the war in the first place, and the peace comes from recognizing that you're participating in that whole event. And at the heart of things, what technically is an alien to the estate? And if we're talking about all these alien things, who might they actually be? At law, we're talking about here. Because as we described, finding out you're obligated to a whole bunch of rules that might include jail and the death penalty might be a bitter pill to swallow. It might be a harsh realization that might cause a reaction in some people that have willingly committed these types of offences. So all of this starts to come full circle. But we look at something else quickly. This is a bit of kit. It's the third one that I've had because, as you can see, I use them. Right, this has probably taken 30,000 plus photos. But this is the other side of the adventure, is looking through that all the time. Trying to find that picture and documenting everywhere you go and all the things that you do. So using one of these has formed a greater part of my life, really. So I'm starting to put a whole bunch of pictures online and starting to offer some prints for sale. So slowly we will start putting some work together. Now, I've travelled near and far, been to places all over the country, from the outback to the beach, to the cities, to the country. I've crossed state lines, as they call them in the usufruct, because those colonial boundaries don't exist, right? Now we get nations. Nations that are the British Commonwealth of Nations at the present day. But we have down the bottom here flags and badges of Queen Victoria's empire with its royal standard and its Union Jack, its red ensign, the Australian national flag, the New Zealand national flag, the Irish or Air national flag, and the Union of South Africa national flag. We've got the badge of the Star of India, the coat of arms on a badge for Newfoundland, the Dominion of Canada, which you see on their red ensign, and then Victoria, Queen Victoria, New South Wales, which Queen Victoria split up from the lineage of George III into Queensland and Queen Victoria, Western Australia, South Australia and Tasmania. No London, because in 1936 Queen Victoria abdicated the throne in London at Canada's request. So the empire is sat from where? Melbourne, given that it's got all the foundations of Christ and the foundation of this royal standard sealed in the ground there for a British Commonwealth of Nations, where these bodies agreed to abdicate the throne of London away from them. We don't need you anymore. We are this. Is that what 1940 brought around? I've seen tribes, I've seen all different types of towns, I've seen all different types of people across the country, and I've photographed a lot of probably where you live, excepting Tasmania. It's something that I'd like to get to. But the mainland is something that I am very familiar with. We can have a look through all the different cultures that exist amongst yourselves, because the country isn't quite the city, and people that live at the beach towns aren't quite the outback. So there's a difference across your country that our government tries to make you all as one, grey, the same, when the truth of the matter is that you're a large land space that gives you technically different ways of life, making you different types of people all across your own land. And the government's not willing to accept this, except, oh, now that there's no Commonwealth, there's the world and political and communications. Same map as before. Exactly the same map as before. Just all of the history there for the Commonwealth Atlas, has been removed. You can see this by the way they treat the Aborigine across the country, treating all of them as one mob instead of all their different tribal differences, their cultures. And again, beach is not the outback, is it? So there are different habits and ways of living because of the where you are while you're doing that living. So I'll put up some links to a lot of my work. Prints will be available. You can make requests through my catalogue of images that is going to grow. I've already got 7,000 odd images online waiting to go online in the front end. So slowly we get there and we work towards showing you a little bit of that work and give you an understanding that your country is not what you seem to think it is from your couch, because your couch could be in the country. Your couch could be in the desert. Your couch could be in a high-rise building in a city. Your couch could be on a beach looking at the waves. Your couch is very different to your neighbour's couch. But when you're talking about your neighbourhood, you all share a similar couch, don't you? And that's what brought you together. Similar types of people live in the regions that they are attracted to. This is what makes you countrymen, to defend that ideology of feeling secure because that's who you are, rather than who you're told you should be, like this government does to you.
These questions are coming from a constituent. In relation to the convoy to Canberra protest activity at Parliament House just last weekend, pictures of the day appear to show some types of devices at the front of Parliament House in between the entry to Parliament and Parliament lawns, where the protest was in fact occurring. Can you confirm whether the AFP had long-range acoustic devices at Parliament House on Saturday?
That would be something that is our police methodology, which we would have to look at some sort of public interest immunity claim, Senator.
Is there any, surely it's in the public interest to know whether or not they were there without delving too much into
I'd have to, if I could take that on notice, I'd have to get advice.
Okay, I'll be happy. I understand. I'll be happy for that. And also, if you could tell us what type they were.
So if we return back to this ideology of being communities in our towns and look at the differences we have to offer, different fruits, different farming, different jobs and trades, these make up you, a people. And if you want to grow to be that people, not everyone in your town needs to be that lawyer. You need to let the butcher be the best butcher. You need to let the cabinet maker be the best cabinet maker. But at the same time, they need to be free-willed enough to stand on their own mind 2 feet, rather than just their 2 feet. Because this is the world around you that you govern, that you take command of, rather than allowing some nanny to dictate to you while actually enslaving you in your own house in the process. Literally, in the process. And this whole game with God is being unwound, because there's a limit to how much power you can take from a usufruct. God gave the birthright and the first use of the fruits. The first use of the first use of the fruits through your salt, your allegiance, to become that pillar of salt, to become the pillar between two lions. Very spiritual, mythological thing to grasp. But we have that pillar in the harbour demonstrating a pillar of rock that is a peace between nations. So we see this biblical, mythological thing being the indicators of a world game, biblical game, rather than this one world government which seeks to divide you from your gods. This would be starkly apparent with the way Aborigine have been mind manipulated out of their own sovereignties. All these different peoples, all their own peoples, all part of something. And I mean sovereignties, not one sovereignty. All these different titles around the country that were known about in 1965 before something happened. So we look at travelling around, we look at the image of who we are, to become that people that are above that government, that take their place with God again instead of as wards of state, subordinate to this ideology that this parliament can nanny you all the time. And you haven't even looked at state parliaments yet, where all the trauma is actually caused. Right, another old book this time. Hello, Alan Peterson, with a double T. 1930s, I looked it up. It's got no date in the front of it, so I had to look it up. It was printed in 1930. But see all these different, let me go in a bit closer, all these different peoples, all their own peoples, all part of something. Right, so if we open it up, it's a picture book. The British Empire and Commonwealth, 1930. So before abdication, 1936. We have a history of the empire there up until 1920s. See, we got the League of Nations. Right. If we come forward, we've got Rhodesia, Africa, all these different tribes, right? Africa, Australia, right? 1616, a tin plate nailed to a post at Shark Bay, Western Australia, by Captain Dirk Hartogs, so Dutch. This 1816 Governor Davies proclamation conveying the law that both are under the same law. Right, so that there's Eureka Stockade, first railway. Right, this is interesting. Chambers Pillar, a natural monument marking the centre of the continent, and so named by J.M. Stewart, 1860. Right, so the official centre of the continent is Chambers Pillar, which I believe is down the Fink Desert Road, south of Alice Springs. Right? Governor General and Ministers signed the Deed of Federation of the Australian Commonwealth, 1901, which will be the inauguration. This is interesting. 1909, the Commonwealth Navy founded HMAS Australia, the first flagship, which, with the cruisers Sydney and Melbourne, arrived in Australian waters in 1913. Right, the completion of the harbour bridge. Now I've got an interesting picture we'll try and find. And then Canberra is founded. The new federal capital is founded on territory surrendered by New South Wales and vested in the Commonwealth by the Seat of Government Acceptance Act 1909, under Section 125 of the Constitution, the seat of government, the King's seat of government, which then attaches to the King's Domain in Melbourne. Right, the Federal Parliament House, 1927. But the New Zealand now, right? This is very interesting to all you New Zealanders out there. And we can go a bit further into lineage here too. 1840, signing the Treaty of Waitangi, a basic agreement secured by Captain Hobson. The Maori chiefs accepted British sovereignty and in return were guaranteed possession of their lands and fisheries. So the treaty allowed co-inhabitants with the defence of the sovereignty of the King in 1840, or Queen Victoria in 1840, guaranteed possession of their lands and fisheries. Right, so New Zealand. Interior of a Maori house. Farming. And then the Pacific colonies. Right, so that's a book on the British Empire up until 1930, with a tiny little bit of history on the League of Nations at the beginning. Right, so this dominions are the dominions of Canada, Newfoundland, New Zealand, the Commonwealth of Australia, the Union of South Africa and the Irish Free State. In addition, these dominions express their equality with Britain and with one another by their participation together with India in the Imperial Conference, and their independence as nations by their membership, with the exception of Newfoundland, of the League of Nations. And I have a book in there called What is the League of Nations? So we've looked at this avenue in from the top down into the states, putting some sort of command in some sort of frontline action against the people. We can see that stemming from the Morrison government into the states. We can see the command responsibility coming out of that. We can see that going into the police commissioner's office. We can see the Premier being slightly pushed aside while this command takes a overstep over the top of the Premier. We can see the ministers of the state being beholden to this arm. We can see a health minister being a little bit scared while she's told to flex some sort of poison by this command responsibility. We see this command responsibility go higher up a chain. We can talk about Fruin and that responsibility later. We can see all of these connections that put on the table a very heinous action that has a connected command responsibility for lockdowns and the taking away of your rights and the digitizing of a world out of the real world, which can be literally turned off or blown up, and then it disappears. So we're talking about a change that is taking you away from what is real into something that is a dream. A dream. Because it's a false fantasy that they give you while they use all that technology to further imprison you, to further put concrete on your soil, to further put the silver spoon up their nose, instead of allowing all of those finances to get you out of administration and rebuild your country, as was designed in that International Monetary Fund agreement in 1947 that had maybe all these rules attached to it. That would have brought together a United Nations structure created by the High Court Justices here in Australia in 1942, leading to a United Nations Rehabilitation Act 1944, leading to an International Monetary Fund Act 1947. And this is all post that atlas that we discussed. So something was bankrupted, something was attacked by what it formerly signed away from. So there's some questions to be asked at a legal level as to the honour and integrity of a line of authority, isn't there? And this is just a reality that's on the table, given that there are arrests happening, there are vacating of office happening all around the world. And it might have something to do with handing out little cards, it might not. It might have something to do with blowing up all of the records that might be involved in it. It might not. It might have the removal of Gough Whitlam involved. It might not. It might have the disappearance of a Prime Minister into the ocean involved. It might not. These are all coincidences. While the American president was assassinated, might all be linked together, might not. But then there's this power of God, the scripture and the foundations of a country that is under administration, and those rules might apply. I don't think that's a not. I think that's a given, that they signed up to these monetary policies that involved a whole bunch of evil rules. So while acting in government, and agents of, like the police, the Defence Force and so on, find themselves obligated to those rules, like in the Brereton report. And the damning thing is that justices are aware, I'm sure military men see and are aware, that there's going to be a whole bunch of arrests around the world associated with trading with some sort of enemy, associated with some sort of administrative fraud, abuse, use of the people, a mind manipulation that is so subtle that it takes many years to fracture a society out of the belief that everything around them is real, when it's not. The money dictates the game when there's a stakeholder on the table. And does the stakeholder stand with the father? And did the father give a right into the house for the stakeholder to privatise everything? These are all interesting questions that you have been kept in the dark about for many, many years.
My language has been murdered. My language has been murdered. My shopping trolley murdered. My groceries just gone. I don't like it. When you've turned my voice about, I don't like it. When you vote one nation out, my language has been murdered. My language has been murdered. My shopping trolley murdered. My groceries just gone. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, racist, rubbish, racist, hate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, racist, rubbish, racist, feel the heat. I don't like it when railway lines are white. I don't like it when day becomes night. My language has been murdered. My language has been murdered. My shopping trolley murdered. My groceries just gone. I don't like it. No, I don't. Never did. I don't like it. I don't like anything.